folks, welcome into That Betting Show for April 5th, 2019. Your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs right here at sportsbookreview.com. He's Teddy Savransky. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_covers. I'm Donnie Seymour at Rightside VP. Teddy, let's get right into it. This weekend, there's something that we should know about called the Final Four and the championship game on Monday. But before we get into that, Teddy, we got to talk a little bit of NBA action. Yesterday on the show, opening up line on New Jersey, plus 2.5 for the Philadelphia 76ers, rose to as high as 5.5, closing at 4.5. If you had that Sixers ticket, if you had that money line ticket, spread ticket, you were in good shape, Teddy. But poof, right up in smoke down the stretch.
Sure. I mean, Philly had a 5-point lead with under 3 to play, but they couldn't get stops down the stretch. George Hill went nuts for Milwaukee. And, of course, the only reason George Hill is in the game at that point because Eric Bledsoe got tossed early. So Hill forced to play extended minutes, but a deep team like Milwaukee, no problem when your starting point guard gets tossed a couple minutes into the ballgame. Hill makes the shots. The Bucks do it without Bledsoe. No Jimmy Butler for Philly. I'm telling you, he matters a lot. Embiid's the guy who's moving the lines the most for the 76ers right now. I'm going to put Jimmy Butler as co-MVP with Embiid on Philadelphia. When he's not in the game, the Sixers feel it, and they certainly felt it down the stretch last night when they could not get stops against Milwaukee, turning a winning ticket into a loser in the closing minutes.
Teddy, taking a look at the Sixers. I mean, Ben Simmons didn't have that great a game. Joel Embiid was fantastic, but obviously the Greek Freak is just, in line, headed, ready to take down an MVP possibly. If we take a look at the Sixers this year, Teddy, kind of coming down the stretch, 3 straight losses, 5 out of 7, as it says down there on the ticker, and the Bucks also clinched the top seed overall in the NBA, which means they had the most wins. Last year, Teddy, a little bit different dichotomy. The Sixers coming in red hot into the playoffs, winning double-digit games in a row, go in. Now they actually end up losing to the Boston Celtics, but this year, a little bit different feel, taking the more rested approach, and don't worry about it. We'll be fine in the playoffs. Could this be a detriment for him this year?
Honestly, the last 10 games of the NBA regular season have, when you do a correlation study, zero impact on what happens in the playoffs. Some teams rest, some teams go balls to the wall, some teams are fighting for playoff positioning, some teams aren't. It really, if you're trying to correlate, hey, Philly's struggling right now. They lost 5 out of 7, therefore they're in trouble in the postseason. I think the Sixers will be fine in terms of getting out of the first round. After that, it's going to be a battle in the East. But I don't see any of the lower seeds in the Eastern Conference winning a playoff series, even with Philly struggles. They're going to get out of the first round.
Teddy, common theme in some of these extracurricular games, as we like to say, or postseason games on the lower level, not talking about March Madness with the NCAA main tournament, but we're taking a look at the CIT. Another high-level total. We've seen a few of these, Teddy, marked, 165 and north of that, go up in flames. They had a pretty good pace to this game, but when you're talking about, betting regular season, betting postseason, normally if I told you, hey, Teddy, congratulations, 90-70, you hit the total. Didn't even come close in this one.
Well, we talked right here on That Betting Show yesterday, Donnie, about the fact that for these high totals to get up and over, you need both teams to play with pace and both teams to get their fair share of makes. What happened last night? Well, one of the two teams played with pace and got their fair share of makes. That, of course, the Thundering Herd. The other team, Green Bay, well, second half, only 28 points. In fact, they outscored by 22 after the break. The pace was there for Green Bay, but the makes were not. Hence, this game staying under the total.
Certainly running out of gas there. The road team actually had the lead at the break, Teddy, but faded down the stretch. I believe it was a 50-point second half that, Wisconsin Green Bay ran into against Marshall. So that series is over. We have another series tonight that we're going to preview in just a little bit before we get to the Final Four as well. Noah Syndergaard, Teddy, you've heard this guy. I mean, look, fantastic pitcher, unbelievable, takes the mound, running his mouth a little bit more than throwing pitches so far early in the season. We saw how upset he was at the Mets leaving and going to Syracuse and then flying in for opening day. But now Syndergaard flies ahead of the New York Mets. They get out late in Miami last night, early day action, blaming that on why the bats were slow. Syndergaard did his part yesterday. 6 innings, 1 earned run at that point. Weren't able to overcome a 4-0 lead with the Nationals. But Syndergaard running that mouth early, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. Flat out, he's right. A night game, then travel, then a day game? NBA players wouldn't stand for that shit. No way, But in MLB, yeah, guys deal with it. The Mets looked real sleepy on offense yesterday, as they should have, playing a night game with a flight, getting home at 2 a.m. And oh, by the way, now you got to be back at the stadium in a couple hours. They looked sleepy. It was a bad scheduling spot. Syndergaard had every right to complain about it. He had every right to complain about the trip to Syracuse. not what big league teams are supposed to be doing to keep their players rested and fresh for a long MLB season. Usually, you know me, I got no sympathy for these guys. But in this case, Syndergaard's right. And the fact that he's talking about it and getting heat for it, no, the guy's right. He's allowed to say his piece.
Yeah, exactly. Especially to start the season, Teddy. It wasn't like Major League Baseball did this to him. That was self-inflicted Mets wounds to say, hey, it's 75 degrees down here in like Sarasota, Florida. Why don't we go up to Syracuse in the cold and go in a dome that's built for basketball and football, and we'll have a nice workout before then we fly in the opening day. Certainly does have a point of view on that one. If we take a look, Teddy, overnight line movers, as we always like to say here on That Betting Show, these lines are a-moving, and keep in touch with them at SBRodds.com, the single best place on the internet to get all these updated lines. Taking a look early, Teddy, Marlins getting a little bit of love on Friday. Offshore markets open around minus 170, dropping to around minus 150 and less, but rebounding at approximately 155 as we film the show. Marlins Braves, total of 8, Lopez versus Gausman.
Yeah, and it's all about Gausman. The markets don't trust him. He started the season on a 10-day injured list because he had right shoulder inflammation. He went to, the famed rotator cuff guy, James Andrews, said no structural problems, just rest for a couple of weeks. He says he's had no pain in his shoulder. He says he's had an extended spring training and everything's going to be fine. But the market's clearly concerned about Kevin Gausman's health going into the opener against, the opener of this series, I should say, against the Marlins.
Taking a bat to the pinata, Teddy, with Boston. If we take a look, getting the majority of the tickets early morning action, but that line is dropping. Open up offshore at 129, 130, now dipping back into the 120s. The Diamondbacks currently showing a plus 110 primarily across the board, a total of 8.5. Porcello versus Godley. Teddy, we talked yesterday. Red Sox are lined like they're going to get to close to 100 wins this year. Still haven't gotten out of their own way, and we're showing early some people taking a chunk out of that early line.
It's hard to trust the Red Sox right now, and the betting markets are showing that very, very clearly. Of course, 2-6 so far on the season. No momentum off their come-from-behind win on Wednesday. Another flat game yesterday, and a game with a lot of mental errors. 2 runners thrown out on the bases yesterday, including Mookie Betts get thrown out at third base for the first out in the 9th. Trying to go from first to third on a single when you're trailing by margin. You just can't do that. Alex Cora quote, that's one right there that can't happen. So a lot of mental miscues for Boston to go along with a lineup that's not getting clutch hits and a pitching staff that's been a little bit dicey in early season play. So I'm not excited about laying the price with the Red Sox. The markets aren't either. Arizona with their home debut today.
Teddy, those powerhouse Orlando Magic, a heavy favorite on Friday morning. Offshore markets open up at minus 7.5. As I'm looking right now, Teddy, 9s across the board with extra juice and a total of 226. Moneyline split plus 300, minus 180. How about those Magic, Teddy, moving those lines?
I'm not surprised at all. The Orlando Magic have been taking money in early betting action on Friday. This is a Magic team that has been taking care of business against the bottom feeders. 8-2 straight up, 7-3 against the spread their last 10. That includes 4 wins and covers against other lottery teams like the Atlanta Hawks. And for the first time in this whole stretch run for the Magic, they're finally in control of their own destiny, meaning if they win out, they'll be in the postseason. All that being said, Atlanta hasn't been a pushover in recent weeks, and I would not be surprised at all to see the Hawks give the Magic a battle tonight. This move up to minus 9 for Orlando, not my money.
Teddy, watch what you bet here on That Betting Show. We've been waiting all week long for the Final Four here, and we finally get it down. Can UVA slow down Auburn's 3-point offense? Auburn versus Virginia, minus 5.5 total, 131 moneyline split, plus 210, minus 250, 6:09 Eastern time. Why they picked that 09, I have no idea, but it will be broadcast on CBS live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Auburn, Teddy, 20-14 against the number in all line games this season, 5-2 against the spread as a dog, and 7-2 on neutral courts. If we take a look at Virginia, making money all season long for their backers, Teddy, 25-11 against the number on the season, 23-11 as favorites, and only 5-4 though against the spread on neutral courts. This one should be a good one, Teddy, lining up right out of the gates in the Final Four.
Yeah, it sure has. And we've seen a two-way action on this ball. The initial money came towards the dog. And since that initial money coming to the dog, this line was at 5 early in the week. Now we're seeing 5.5. So even some 6s that popped up last night. It's pretty clear to me that at this stage of the game, the wise guys looking at the Virginia side a little bit more than the Auburn side, despite the fact that, when you look at who's had the best tournament, Auburn just beat Kansas, North Carolina, and Kentucky in 3 straight games. Talk about blue bloods. They earned the right to be here. And obviously, Bruce Pearl, as a coach that people know and people admire, and an Auburn team that has been draining threes, throughout the tournament. That's why they're here. They hit 17 against North Carolina, 13 against Kansas, 12 against New Mexico State. Of course, people have forgotten that New Mexico State meltdown by now. They're supposed to be out in the first round, potentially, if the Aggies hit their free throws. They did not, and then you have a wild run where you beat 3 elite teams. But the question for me, here's where how much does Chuma Okeke matter? How much are they going to miss him? Obviously, playing on short rest without him, boy, they were hitting shots again in the regional final. But now you go home, you got to go back, and you got to deal with the fact that, hey, your leading rebounder, best defender, number 3 scorer, and probably the only NBA prospect on this team, he will not be playing. That's an impact injury. Now, the question is Virginia. We haven't seen Virginia play a great game in this tournament yet. They played a good second half against Gardner-Webb after looking real shaky early. And repeatedly, you're seeing, the Oklahoma game, they weren't able to pull away. Oregon game got the stops that mattered. Purdue game, were able to get the victory. But we haven't seen Virginia play at an elite level in this tournament. A team that ranks, they've given up 45% shooting in the tournament, 39% from three-point range. Carson Edwards single-handedly ate them up in the Elite Eight. Kyle Guy hasn't been hitting. DeAndre Hunter has only 3 assists in the last 3 games. Virginia's going to win and cover. They're going to need to bring their A game. We haven't seen that yet in the postseason, but at the same time, do you trust Auburn to hit threes against this defense? Do you trust Auburn to win and cover, or to cover a point spread without their best player? I'm not convinced I do. So I'm more inclined to lay than to take in this one.
Yeah, it seems like, Teddy, like a little bit of regression there on three-point shots. I mean, obviously, Purdue with Carson Edwards goes 10 of 19. They add a couple more with Klein. You would figure the defense would shut it down. Let's also talk about, Teddy, this is going to be played at US Bank Stadium. For the people out there that don't really know what US Bank Stadium is, that's where the Minnesota Vikings play. That massive monstrosity that was home to the Super Bowl just, 2 years ago. Interesting caveat in this game, Teddy, because we know it's a lot of glass there. Do you know the NCAA actually spent millions of dollars building curtains to cover up the sun? Why? Because this game's tipping off Eastern time, 6 o'clock, which is 5 o'clock, I believe, out there in the Midwest. Talk about the threes in volume, Teddy, because that's one thing you can't stop. If Auburn's going to shoot and make a lot of threes, what can you do about it? But if it's that big dome and they're thrown off a little bit, Virginia slows it down, they may look at start pressing in this game.
See, the thing is, Donnie, they play the Final Four in these cavernous arenas every year. And some years, everyone says, oh, the sight lines are bad. The shot selection's bad. No one's going to hit anything. And they're draining threes from start to finish in the Final Four. Other years, you get the same quotes. And guess what? It is harder to make shots in the cavernous arena. Prior to tip-off, it's very difficult to know. And frankly, there's a fair bit of randomness in it as well. We always like to give after the fact, oh, they couldn't make shots because it was a cavernous arena. And then all of a sudden they're making threes. You're like, oh, well, what's the excuse now? So it's not anything that I'm going to make a bet total-wise or sidewise based on how I think a team is going to react to the different environment for shooting. There's a fair bit of randomness in that, Donnie. There really is.
Teddy, maybe they got to do a little Hoosiers action out there, get the measuring tape out, measure it. Yep, looks like it's 10 feet. Yep, looks like the dimensions are the same. We'll see if that takes place. Texas Tech on the big stage. First time in a long time for Texas Tech going up against Michigan State. Texas Tech currently sitting at plus 2.5 total of 132 money line split, plus 130, minus 150. Texas Tech 9-15 against the spread on the season. Teddy 4-3 as a dog, 6-3 on neutral courts. How about Michigan State? If you're just blind backing Michigan State against the line, Teddy, 27-11. And how about as a favorite? Everybody loves the better favorite. 24-9 against the numbers of favorite. 7-3, 8 against the spread on neutral courts. And how about this, Teddy? We're going deep into the well here. 7-2 on Saturdays.
That's only their last 9. They played more than 9 Saturday games this season. But look, all right, when it comes to Michigan State, Texas Tech, one's the blue blood and one's the upstart. When it comes to reputations, when it comes to this year's teams, I don't know if there's that great of a difference. Look, here's the quote from Izzo. Yeah, you get used to the Dukes and Kentuckys and Carolinas and Kansases. But this day and age, it's about who's playing the best and who matches up the best. Matchups are very important this time of year. Some teams just don't match up well, and others do. Texas Tech's been matching up well against everybody all year, and while Sparty is clearly the blue blood, the deepest blue blood remaining in the tournament, the team that's been here, the team with the Final Four experience, what's this, number 8 for Izzo, their entire roster, they got one guy who's been to a Final Four. Kenny Goins, he went there as a rookie or as a freshman when he was a walk-on and he didn't play. So it's not like they've got all this Final Four experience. The coach does. Guess what? Chris Beard's been around plenty in recent years. Well, he's a relative unknown among head coaches. We're talking about a guy who has been brilliant. Tubby Smith assistant. He's been in big games, worked under Tom Penders at Texas. It's not like Beard doesn't know what he's doing. Here's his quote. I think there's a poise to our team. Every team we played to this point gave us a real punch in the face, but we got ourselves back up, whether it be game 1 against Northern Kentucky, Buffalo, certainly Michigan was so talented, and then Gonzaga, one of the best teams in the country. I would think we have to look like an experienced team out there at times. In many ways, Texas Tech is Michigan State light without the reputation. The defense is there. The rebounding is there. They got the star power in Culver, just like the Spartans of the star power in Winston. I think this is going to be a battle. I do not see a blowout in this one, and I understand that Sparty's the class, but I'll tell you what, if I'm taking Michigan State, the more I think about it, the more I take them on the money line as opposed to laying the points. This game has the feel of a game that's going to come down to a final possession.
Yeah, it should be going there, Teddy. But how about this? Don't forget about us over here, Teddy, in the CBI. Final game 3, USF versus DePaul. Line is -1 currently, total 145.5. Money line split +100, -120. 7 p.m. You can catch this one tonight, Teddy, on ESPNU. USF 22-13 against the number on the season, 9-4 against the spread as a dog, and 8-2 against the spread on the road. DePaul 15-19 in all line games against the spread this year, 7-9 against the spread as a favorite. This should be an interesting one. Some banged up injuries. You saw the game last time, overtime. A little bit shorthanded DePaul heading into this one, but game 3, winner take all.
If you watch this series, you know exactly what's been going on. Game 1, coin flip. Game 2, coin flip. I mean, literally, one game decided in overtime, the other game decided by a last-second bucket. And if I was catching points, I'd be interested in someone here. At +1, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the third meeting be exactly like the first 2 meetings, coming down to a final shot or a final possession. And when it comes to the total, I mean, what did we see? We saw game 1 where DePaul covered, although the game was played at USF's pace. Game 2, USF covered, although the game was played at DePaul's pace. So it's not even like a side and total scenario here where you can bet 1 and expect to maximize your return on investment by parlaying it with the appropriate total. It's not even that spot here. So, I mean, might be a whole lot of fun to watch. The first 2 games of this series have, but from a betting standpoint, I got very, very little on this one. I don't know that DePaul can shoot as well as they did the other night. I will say that much. They hit 50% from the floor. They're a 42% shooting team for the full season.
Off the mic, Teddy. Guess who's back in the news as the ball turns? Your favorite soap opera right here on sportsbookreview.com. Lonzo Ball back in the news again because of the proud papa. If he just stayed out of his way, the number 2 overall pick in Los Angeles, playing for the Lakers, signing with Nike on a shoe deal, hiring a real agent for himself. Doesn't seem to be the case. Instead, what happens, Teddy? $2 million is stolen from him. You fire your agent. You fire the partner in Big Baller Brand, and it all looks like a mess. Thank you to Lonzo Ball. And the news comes out again that says, hey, you know what? Dad's still going to call the shots around here for me. Good luck, kid.
This is my take, flat out, on Lonzo Ball. We wouldn't know who this kid was if he wasn't for his dad. I don't think he'd been the number 2 overall pick if it was for his dad. So we say, oh, well, the dad's still calling the shots. I think the dad's done a pretty good job of setting up his career in L.A., getting him some hype and getting him some love for a kid who's been, let's call it what it is, mediocre at best through his first 2 NBA seasons, injury-riddled and mediocre. So you say, Big Brawler Brand bringing him down? Big Brawler Brand and Papa are keeping Lonzo Ball relevant. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know his name.
No, Lonzo Ball, it's just amazing to me because when you get the kid and he's like high-pressure environment as is, he actually took a little bit of a step back, I thought, during the season to let the kid, go. But Lonzo Ball ends up getting injured and all this news comes out. I just need a clean break right now for him, Teddy. I just need him to say, you know what? Go out there and play basketball and live your life. That's where I'm at in this story.
It'll never happen. It'll never happen. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but Lonzo Ball is a brother to two other kids who play basketball. He has a dad who's going to get headlines, and that's just how it is. So is he great? I haven't seen him be great at an NBA level. The guy has gotten more hype than any mediocre rookie and second-year player in the history of the league, probably. That has a lot to do with the dad. So Big Baller Brand has done Lonzo Ball all kinds of favors, even though he's mad at him now.
Hey, Teddy, I'm not mad at you. And we got the Final Four tomorrow. And all of a sudden on Monday, we're going to talk championship action right here on That Betting Show. Thanks for tuning in. April 5th, 2019, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. He's Teddy Savransky. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_covers. I'm Donnie Seymour, Rightside VP. We'll catch you Monday.